Hi, it's Brian Crombie here, candidate for mayor in the upcoming Mississauga mayoralty election. One candidate last week came up with a big idea that got some people excited and a fair amount of media attention, and then got a whole bunch of other people to criticize the idea. And I want to talk for a second about the power of big idea, because I think it was too bad that people so quickly jumped on the negative in regards to it. And it was the idea about bringing an NHL hockey team to Mississauga. Obviously, huge expense associated with it, and potentially financially impractical, but it's not to be dismissed right away. And so I'll give you a couple of factors to start with. So, costs probably $1 billion to buy an NHL franchise, $1.3 billion, $1.5 billion to buy a team. So it's a fair amount of money, no question about it. But they hold their value. And the teams have gone up. In 2003, Eugene Melnyk bought the Ottawa Senators for $80 million US, $126 million Canadian, and the family sold the business 20 years later for $1 billion. So they hold their value and they increase in value fairly substantially. Sports franchises have done that repeatedly over time. So you probably need either a bunch of rich people or some syndicate of people that are going to end up holding the brand franchise, or you need a rich person that's going to be able to bring the franchise to your city. And certainly when Markham was thinking about it, when Hamilton was thinking about it, when Kitchener-Waterloo was thinking about it, there was a very wealthy person that was the interested party in bringing the franchise to the town. Second of all, you need the asset. And I have been very involved in building franchise assets in two major cities. I was very involved in Ottawa, buying the Ottawa Senators, and then thinking about buying land in downtown Ottawa to build a downtown arena. I worked for the owner of the Ottawa Senators off and on for about 20 years. Just to give you a sense, here's a tombstone, a memento for an $80 million financing I did for the Ottawa Senators. And here's another memento that I got for $130 million financing for the Ottawa Senators. It was an incredible experience, one of the best experiences of my life. Negotiated with the National Capital Commission, with the City of Ottawa, with the Province of Ontario, two different times, both when he purchased the team in 2003, and then from 2017 until 2021 in regards to the potential of moving it downtown. We did a tax increment financing strategic plan for the 53 acres around the potential new arena. The net present value, so taking all the money into the future and putting it in today's dollars, was $1.5 billion. Huge amount of tax revenue alone, not even counting the value that would get from the real estate development. With that kind of money, you can do a lot of things. In Edmonton, we went, and I had the opportunity to travel around the world and take a look at least North America, and take a look at several other downtown revitalizations. And we all know, the downtown arena in Toronto, before it moved south of Union Station, all of Union Station South were a bunch of vacant parking lots. The cheap place to go park when you were going downtown, $10 parking lot. Now it is almost the south end and almost the new South Financial District of Toronto, all because of the revitalization that came from that arena. In Edmonton, the Rogers Place and the Ice District is the new downtown for Edmonton. Tampa Bay is one of those places in all of North America that's been described as an incredible revitalization of downtown. I had the privilege of working, and here's another memento, when I did a $150 million financing for the Montreal Forum / Molson Center, now called the Bell Center, in downtown Montreal, when I was the person responsible for doing that financing, working for Molson's at the time, and negotiating with CP to do a joint venture with the City of Montreal to get the zoning for a bunch of buildings, and to actually oversee the financial parts of the construction of that arena that transformed that south end of Montreal as well. So big ideas, big institutions can change things fairly dramatically. And they bring a lot of new development, and that new development brings a lot of new tax revenue. And so to dismiss it out of hand the way some people did, I think is completely wrong. There are three different places in the Mississauga area that I've identified that I think that have the right bisection of a couple different factors, including transportation, transit, available land, and very importantly, available land that's got enough extra land that you can get the peripheral real estate development around it. Because to justify the expense associated with building an arena, one needs the peripheral real estate development. There's only three cities actually now only two cities in the NHL that don't have downtown arenas. One of them was just sold to Salt Lake City, and so it's going to change from a suburban location into an urban location. Canada, Ottawa is one, and Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or outside of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, is another. Those suburban greenfield, no development around it locations, they just don't work anymore. You need to be in a downtown location. And the reason why is you want to get all that peripheral real estate development. You want to get the bars, the restaurants, the condos, the hotels, all of the other things that come around it. But we could do that in Mississauga. Mississauga is almost 1 million people. It's 800, almost 900,000 people. It's going to be 1 million people fairly shortly. It is the 6th largest city in Canada, the 3rd largest city in Ontario. It's bigger in size than Hamilton, which is talked about having an NHL team. It's bigger than Markham. It's bigger than Winnipeg. And if you actually took Mississauga and Brampton and thought about it as one entity, and it's not, I know, but thought about it as one entity, and maybe even Milton or Oakville, and added it up, we would be over 1.5 million people. We'd be the 3rd largest city in all of Canada. We'd be bigger than Calgary, than Edmonton, than Winnipeg, than all those other cities that have got NHL teams. And when you think about New York, it's got 3 NHL teams effectively in the metropolitan area. You think about Los Angeles, it's got 2 NHL teams in the metropolitan area. In all of North America, Toronto is the 4th largest metropolitan region at almost 7 million people, going on to 10 in the next couple of years. Mexico City, New York, Los Angeles, and then Toronto. We're bigger than Greater Chicago, Dallas, a lot of those areas. So when you think about where there could be an incredibly successful NHL franchise, it is Mississauga, or it's Western Toronto, if you don't want to call it Mississauga. What do we need? We need transit, we need transportation, we need land, we need an urban environment, and we need peripheral real estate development, and enough area such that you can have an incremental property tax revitalization that is going to justify the expenditure of money. I'm not sure if it'll work, but it's worth thinking about, and it's not something one could and should dismiss out of hand. And if not NHL, you know what? CFL, women's hockey, Major League Soccer. There are other things that can make a city. And what comes with a city is you turn from a sleepy suburb into a big city. And Mississauga deserves to be thought of as a big city. Let me give you another idea that I think is well worth thinking about. Waterfront retail entertainment, another big idea. One Port Street is that pier that sticks out into Lake Ontario, right by the Credit River. It is almost 20 acres, 18 acres. It's got on it a 150,000 square foot warehouse building that all it does is stores boats in the winter and a bunch of geese and other birds. It's a travesty that it's not better used. The city of Mississauga and Canada Lands, who are the owner, have got a development plan to put something like 10 or 12 condominiums on it and a nice boardwalk around it. You know what? We're going to have enough condos at Brightwater and at Lakeview. St. Lawrence Market is 110,000 square feet. Granville Island Market is smaller. The whole area is about 30 acres, and so it's bigger than the 20 acres that you've got at One Port Street, but the buildings itself are smaller. There are 20 cities around North America that are currently either building or planning retail entertainment complexes with farmers markets and retail and entertainment and restaurants on their waterfront, because that's what people want. People want to go to the waterfront, they want to walk around, and they want to experience things. And I could go through the list, and you probably are aware of them. The St. Lawrence Market is one of the best examples, and regrettably, it's not on the waterfront anymore. The water used to be there. The water is obviously the land that we filled in to the south of it. And we're expanding it because it's not, or they're expanding in Toronto because it's not big enough. Barrie, Collingwood, St. John, Halifax, Vancouver, Granville Island, North Vancouver, Lonsdale Quay, Seattle, San Francisco, Fisherman's Wharf, South Street, Steeport, Tampa in New York, Tampa Bay. The list goes on and on of places that would take this 150,000 square foot warehouse, this 20 acres or 18 acres of beautiful pier that sticks right out into the to the water. And the last thing they would do would be to build 10 or 12 condominium buildings on it. They would build a beautiful retail entertainment complex. If we took the LRT that's going to stop at the Port Credit Go and extend it down to 1 Port Street, which is like 3 blocks south, you would have incredible access to it. The pavement out to the side around the warehouse is so large you could have incredible concerts, incredible festivals, just an incredible time. Have everyone enjoy that waterfront. If you've walked out that pier that goes beside the Credit River on the east side of Credit River, you just walk out and walk back and you stare at all that land and you wish you could walk around it and you can't walk around it. Why don't we have that big idea? And if you did that, you know what you would do is you would create Port Credit as an incredible spot on the water, which it is good today, but even more so in the future. And if you were Halifax, if you were St. John's, if you were Vancouver, if you were North Vancouver, if you were New York, Seattle, Tampa Bay, you wouldn't squander this opportunity. And I could go on with a couple of other big ideas. We've got a park in the center of Mississauga that is the 3rd largest urban park in all of North America. But we don't do anything to make it a spectacular park. We don't have those things in it that make it a park that everyone wants to go to. If you take Arundel Conservation Area, Riverwood Park, and the Pinchin Farms, which are 3 different entities, different organizations that manage them and coordinate them, but you put them together, they're contiguous. It's 551 acres. And Stanley Park and Central Park are bigger, but every other urban park in North America is smaller. Think about how important Central Park is to Manhattan or Stanley Park is to Vancouver. And what is it? It's the tea house, or it's Terrace on the Green. It's the zoo. It's a skating rink. It's a lawn where you do concerts. It's a seawall where you can walk all around, and you have marathons and runs and races and biking and totem pole museums and things that bring people to the park and say, this is the thing you want to go see if you're coming to visit our city. I went to this a seminar in Manhattan once when I was very involved in city planning a couple of years ago, about a decade ago, and they said, when you think about your city, what is that thing about your city that you think about right away, that you can't think about your city? And that is what you've got to use as the brand, as the kernel to create economic development, to create a brand image, to create tourism. When you think about New York, you think about Times Square, you think about Central Park, and maybe you think about Wall Street. When you think about Vancouver, you probably think about Stanley Park and maybe Granville Island and the ocean. When you think about Mississauga, what is it that makes us special? When they went around there, you know what people said? Hazel McCallion, longest serving mayor. That was the one thing. It's a great thing, but it was the one thing that made Mississauga special. I think our lakefront makes Mississauga special, and we should make it even more special, and we should invest in it. I think that Arundel Conservation Area, Riverwood, and the Pinchin Farms could be a central park for Mississauga. I think we should think about some big ideas like Peter was talking about. Not sure if his one was the best one and it has some real economic challenges, but we've got to think about those things. The Britannia Farms, 240 acres, right on Huron, Ontario, completely unexploited, unused. Why don't we develop it into something special? I worry that we're not doing enough. We're not dreaming big enough. We don't have a vision big enough to think about what Mississauga could and should be. And I remind you, Mississauga is going to be 1 million people pretty soon. If you think about the areas around it, we're 1.5 million in total in our sort of our area. The 3rd largest city with those other areas in Canada, 3rd largest in Ontario if you exclude those other areas. Do we get the respect? Do we get the presence that we need? One last point, if I could. The airport corporate zone, which is all of that business that wraps around the airport, is the 2nd largest employment zone in all of Canada. Does it get the respect? Does it get the attention? Does it get the investment that it needs and deserves to make sure that it creates the high-powered, high-paying, good jobs for us and for our kids in the future and the people that are going to come into it? We've got, huge benefits of technology in Mississauga, Brampton, around the airport. We've got the benefit of proximity to the airport because a lot of those companies are there because they want to get in and out of Toronto and the Mississauga area because of air flight, obviously. we have an opportunity to become an economic powerhouse and create great jobs. And importantly, when I'm talking about all these different things and all these different big ideas, remember, it is the commercial development that brings in the property tax revenue that keeps your taxes low. And so, number one, I think it creates a more vibrant city, but it also keeps property taxes low. You know, Toronto has had the benefit of the downtown financial district for a long period of time, and some industrial activity that has kept Toronto property taxes lower than all of the 905. And I think prior administrations in Toronto, you know, used that to their benefit. There's no question. And I think that, you know, we've done that to a certain extent in Mississauga, but I don't think to the extent that we need and we could and we should. To attract commercial development, charge them the appropriate property tax so that we can keep our property taxes reasonable, create the jobs that we want, create the economic development that we need. And I think create a city that we're proud of, that's vibrant. And I'm not suggesting we're going to have a, you know, huge amount of high rises everywhere, but I do think that we need some development in certain places. And I do think we need some exciting development. Downtown Mississauga, maybe by the lake, in some nodes around it. And we've got to do something better to make sure that the airport corporate zone is the economic powerhouse that it could and should, and to a certain extent already is, but even more so be. One last idea. Neptis Foundation did this massive study that said that when any city has two economic zones, they have to be connected. If they're not connected, they're two separate ecosystems. They develop completely separately because the business people, the accountants, the lawyers don't end up interacting. And they used examples of La Défense and the Champs-Élysées, City of London and Canary Wharf, New York and Brooklyn and New Jersey, with rapid transit that connected them all. There was a study done at one point in time that said the UP Express that goes from Union Station up to Weston and then into Terminal 1 could actually continue south and have a stop right in the middle of that office district that's just south of the 401 in the airport corporate zone. If you could jump on a UP Express at the airport corporate zone and be downtown in half an hour or so, rather than go on the Gardner for 45 minutes or an hour and a half with the traffic congestion we have right now, we connect these two areas. No business person's going to take the Edmonton Crosstown 12 stops or whatever it is across to Yonge Street and then the subway down to Bay and King. It's just not going to happen. That's not the type of connection we need. We need to connect the airport corporate zone to downtown Toronto. We need to have a economic development focus on that airport corporate zone. It could be and should be the AI capital of Canada. It could be the pharmaceutical biotech capital of Canada. It could be the high-tech capital of Canada. We've got that opportunity in Mississauga. We just need to think about some of these big ideas. Anyway, just a couple ideas for you. My point being, if someone comes up with some big ideas, don't dismiss it right away. Let's think it through. Let's analyze it. Let's think about the property tax revenue that comes from it. And so therefore, if that exists, does it make sense? And let's just not build more condos absolutely everywhere. There's got to be some opportunities to build some things that are like retail entertainment or nice shopping districts, or, you know, maybe Black Creek Pioneer Village or Riverdale Farms right on here in Ontario. I'd love it. And a central park. A park that is 551 acres. You know what? I presented this to the Riverdale board at one point in time, and a guy from UTM, a professor at UTM, said, "Brian, brilliant idea, but you're wrong. Because if you actually added in the contiguous parkland at UTM to what you're talking about, you'd be over 850 acres, and you'd be the second largest urban park in all of North America. But UTM and their parkland doesn't connect into Arundel, doesn't connect in really well with Riverdale, doesn't connect in with Pinchin Farms, doesn't connect in with the ravines that go all the way up north of it and into Streetsville, but it could and should. And it could be that place that is so spectacular that every single time a family member, a tourist, a friend comes to Mississauga, you say, let's go to Riverdale. Let's go to Arundel. It's the park that makes Mississauga great. A couple ideas for you. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.